This is ads, please hit the like and subscribe. Russia-China military alliance, US sanctions on 5 Chinese companies, supply to the Russian army. The United States is on the verge of a frontal confrontation with China and Eurasia as it has for the first time imposed sanctions on 5 Chinese companies and research institutes on the grounds that they support the Russian army and its defense industry. There is now tangible evidence that China and Russia have enhanced military cooperation and, as War News 24/7 has been writing for months, NATO and AUKUS are fighting together. The move, which took effect on Tuesday, marks the first time US officials have taken action against Chinese companies over Russia's support for the war in Ukraine. The director of the US National Intelligence Service, Avril Haines, stressed that China is helping Russia behind the scenes. We can safely conclude that China considers Russia as its main ally. That's a bad message for us. Blacklisted 5 Chinese companies. More specifically, the government of Joe Biden added 5 Chinese companies to the blacklist of trade due to the support of Russia's military and defense industrial base. The Biden government is talking about violating the sanctions imposed on Russia. Today's action against these Chinese companies sends a strong message to entities and individuals around the world that if they support Russia, the United States will punish them, said Alan Estevez, Assistant Secretary of Commerce. The United States has also accused research institutes in China of backing the Russian military after the invasion of Ukraine, in one of the first tangible signs that Chinese entities are helping Russia against Washington's wishes. The Chinese companies are 1. Kinek Electronic, 2. King Pai, 3. Sino Electronics, 4. Winink Electronic, 5. World Jetta, HK, Logistics. The Commerce Department said it was punishing them and adding 5 of the companies to a blacklist known as the Entity List. He also accused 2 Chinese research institutes that have been blacklisted since 2018 of supporting the Russian military in recent weeks. Entities added to the list are virtually excluded from the US tech market. All companies and institutes have signed recent contracts to continue supplying the Russian military, violating export controls under the United States aimed at preventing Russia from gaining access to high-tech components and equipment, the Commerce Department said in a statement. The United States has not said what kind of products Chinese companies agreed to supply to the Russian military. However, several of the new blacklisted companies in China sell electronics. 3 of the Chinese companies also have offices in other countries, in Russia, Vietnam, Lithuania, and Britain, the Commerce Department said. But he called them entities with essential, primary activities in China. The 25 are based in China. China Electronics Technology Group Corporation 13th Research Institute, SEC-13, and its subsidiary, the subsidiary Microelectronic Technology in China, said the Department of Commerce. Both are units of the State Defense Group SEC. The Chinese embassy in Washington has denied that the country has provided any assistance to the Russian military. China's position on the Ukrainian issue is consistent and clear, she said in a statement. We are playing a constructive role in promoting peace talks and we have not provided military assistance to the warring parties. China and Russia maintain normal energy and trade cooperation, and the legitimate interests of Chinese companies should not be compromised. The sanctions are against international law and the basic rules governing international relations. The agency also added 31 entities to the blacklist from countries such as Russia, the United Arab Emirates, Lithuania, Pakistan, Singapore, the United Kingdom, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam, according to the Federal Register. However, of the 36 companies added, 25 were based in China. China angry response. China's foreign ministry says it has staged strong protests in the United States, calling on Washington to lift unilateral sanctions and pledge to defend the interests of Chinese companies. China has urged the United States to immediately lift sanctions on 5 Chinese companies and end long-term jurisdiction and unilateral sanctions against Chinese companies. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said. Sanctions under the guise of supporting Russia's military and defense industrial base are not based on international law nor are they approved by the UN Security Council, Zhao said. It is a unilateral sanction and long-term jurisdiction by the United States. China is strongly opposed to this, Zhao said. China and Russia are conducting normal economic and trade cooperation on the basis of mutual respect, equality and mutual benefit, which should not be subject to interference or restrictions by any third party, the ministry spokesman said. The United States must not undermine China's legitimate interests in any way when it comes to its relations with Russia. China will resolutely safeguard the legal rights and interests of Chinese companies, he said. We urge the United States to correct its mistakes immediately, lift the relevant sanctions and end long-term jurisdiction and unilateral sanctions against Chinese companies, Zhao said. This is ads, please like and subscribe. To please donate, see description. Please also subscribe to ads 2, for even more videos. Link in description. Thank you.